I am so happy to have Daria back here today is that Chattanooga is home for her, and she cares passionately about how physicians interact with the media. We kind of mentioned earlier, many of you have probably not seen things like Dr. Oz, but she's been featured on those types of large national scale media outlets, and she'll be hopefully joining us to work clinically some in the future. And Dr. Daria has really created a great career with an outstanding work-life balance. And if that's one thing that I hope that she brings to the table for our residency program, is how someone who can be a media personality can be a great mom and physician too, and how to bring that balance to your life. And I think that's going to be an important asset that she brings to the UT College of Medicine and the Department of Emergency Medicine here. So as Paul gets this kind of finalized and set up, I'd like to bring Dr. Long Gillespie. Thank you again for coming today.
Thank you. Appreciate it. You working?
We're being tested. See the audio change.
Okay.
Do you have a lot of audio?
I do. Some videos. Do you want to just get?
Your audio was getting carried over the HDMI, but it's not now.
Okay.
Do you have something you can play?
And you want to just play something in the presentation?
You can play anything, anywhere.
get it.
Anything you have sound on. You can play a
One,
song.
two.
Doesn't matter.
Y'all don't look. It'll spoil everything.
Spoiler alert.
Okay. Here's one. No, it's not playing it.
Does it need to be told to port to the headphone jack?
Oh, because that thing was working, but it
I wonder if we have to go into audio settings on your Mac and tell it to actually
Shouldn't.
put the sound to the headphone jack.
No, it should be pushing it out.
And not to
The
the
volume issue for me.
Sorry, y'all.
No, you're up already. You heard the crackle, right?
We're isolating the sick, quarantine.
This is what I'm...
It stopped.
Can you get me back to your settings?
Yep. Was that connection just not working well enough?
Where's Jerma? Tech support.
It was failing. That was
Vince
y'all.
Smith.
I don't think... Crockett's here.
Okay.
I'm not as good as those guys.
Yeah, Crockett's an entrepreneur. He's not a hardware guy. We've already had this discussion.
Well, our problem is we don't get much experience with Macs because the hospital doesn't really use them.
Here. Headphone port.
Headphone port.
Yeah, so
And it should have worked.
I'm
You
better
may just have to
at
unplug,
coding.
hold your mic close to the computer.
Okay. If need be.
Potential. Or we could put your computer up here and use that mic.
Whichever.
both work at the
Whichever
same
you think
time.
works better. That other cord was also working when my computer was over there. The original HDMI.
Right.
All right, let's go and get started, then we can.
And then you can use your...
Right.
Okay. Do you want to just plug in the black one while it's here?
The black cable?
Yeah.
The problem was it was flaking on or off
Okay.
and on.
It won't. Okay. All right.
It's not liking
All right. Then we will just get started. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for having me today. It's truly a pleasure. It's my disclosures, the housekeeping up front. And the reason we're here today is because we as physicians and providers, from the vaccine debate to healthcare policy reform to malpractice policy, we've in many ways lost our place at the table. And I think that's primarily because we've lost the narrative. We've lost our voice and our role as the voice of medicine. Others have taken our place, frankly, many times others who have less knowledge and definitely less clinical experience than we have at providing clinical care. And that's a problem for healthcare, the healthcare system, and it's a problem for our patients. But it's not too late, because I truly believe that it is possible to reverse this trend and really make sure that our patients and viewers get good, trustworthy healthcare-related advice, and that our healthcare policy has strong clinical input. So just a few examples of where we have lost the narrative. If you look today at what the health information people are getting, it's everything from accusing physicians of killing 1,000 people a month to Jenny McCarthy to Kim Kardashian and her latest anti-hyperemesis gravidarum medication. Often it is not physicians, and that is a problem, and that's what we're going to discuss today. So how did I get here? Just quickly, did my residency at Yale and had been to Harvard Business School for my MBA before that, and really didn't have any inclination to go into media, but it was the bird flu epidemic, and all of the patients were watching local news, and the local news was saying, if you think you have bird flu, stay tuned for the 11 p.m. about why you're going to die from bird flu. And so patients were climbing in 8-hour wait length of stay is what we were seeing in our waiting room at Yale at the time. 8 hours. And then patients would get into the room and you'd say, you're a 35-year-old, you're healthy, you do probably have the bird flu, and you definitely have it because you've been in the waiting room for 8 hours, so sorry about that. You don't need to do anything. You're going to be fine. And it became very clear to me that people were in dire need of better healthcare information. They weren't getting it well. So I started doing some local outreach, started working with ASAP and the PR committee, and one thing led to another. Local led to doing some national things and doing the Dr. Oz show, and now doing CNN and Fox News and a lot of different outlets regularly because people are hungry for very balanced and evidence-based information. So it's become something that wasn't my goal at all, but something that is so necessary that it really has grown. So what we're going to talk about today is my challenge for you and why bother, and then if you're interested, how to do it. And of course, this talk is relevant whether you have aspirations to be the next Dr. Oz or you have zero aspirations to do that. Your audience is still your patients. You may have an audience of one, but they are still your patients. And many of the same lessons that we talk about today, whether they are to a reporter or to a patient, are the same. So we'll discuss those. So again, especially if it's on Goop, it must be true. I don't know if any of you have seen the recent debates between the Goop doctors versus the non-Goop doctors. But we are in a constant battle against the, you need to check out Goop. Yeah. I won't say anything besides jade eggs. So just look that up. But we're in a constant battle because we are being outbeaten by clever sound bites and people who have larger followings than we may do because you're busy seeing patients and taking care of people. But this is what people are hearing. There are times, though, that we do break through. And these are your opportunity. Where we break through to our patients are when we're the white hat. This physician was a pediatrician in Flint, Michigan that really brought to light the lead poisoning. Y'all, this is pretty grainy, but y'all probably saw this picture that really went viral. And why did it go viral? It went viral because it showed a side, I don't know who that physician is. Is it an ER doctor? Is it a PD, CT surge doctor who lost a patient? We don't know. But people saw a side of physicians that they normally don't see. They saw the human side, the relatable side, that everybody in the world has seen that, has felt that at some point in time. And of course, the cutting edge. And where we break through the most is if you can combine all of these together. A little bit of the white hat, a little bit of your human side, and also still the scientist, still the physician, talking about the cutting edge and still the expert. So always remember if you're doing anything, to remember these three key components, and especially the white hat and the human part, because that is how you'll get people to listen to you. Of course, you always have an audience. The size just varies. We have patients who record us now, whether you know about it or sometimes secretly. And of course, I don't know if you saw the lawsuit here. It was a patient who he says he didn't know that his phone was recording during his OR case. And you could hear the anesthesiologist talking about it the entire time and the now lawsuit as a result. So you always have an audience. It's important to remember. So why media prep? We talked about raising awareness, influencing the public, reassuring the public, and especially because if you aren't doing it, they're going to get the information from somewhere. Remember, I was talking to Mehmet Oz. He and I work closely at times, and part of my role is to make sure that some of the stuff that he does on his site and on his show, he can do that, but it doesn't make its way over to the company where I work, ShareCare, which I didn't mention. It's a digital health company founded by one of the WebMD co-founders, and we provide a lot of direct-to-consumer information, and as well as to the business population health things. And that's where I do a lot of my media when I'm not doing it at CNN and Fox News. And Oz and I were talking, partly because there is a tension there. He has a certain level of science and evidence base, and that is different than what I allow on ShareCare. And I remember I was thinking there was stuff on adrenal fatigue. And I said, I don't want any content on adrenal fatigue on ShareCare. It's not evidence-based. This was about 4 years ago. It's not evidence-based. There's not science for it. I'm taking it all off. And he said, Daria, people are searching for adrenal fatigue. They're going to look for it. They're going to Google it. He said, so you can either leave it all off, in which case they're going to go somewhere else, find out information and find out whatever they want. Or you can put your opinion and the evidence base and the science of whether adrenal fatigue is real or not, you can put it on ShareCare. People are looking for it, and you can provide the trusted source. So that's really the reason, because people are going to look for information, and are you going to give it to them, or is somebody else that you're going to have to correct them about going to give it to them? How to start? It's easy to start. If y'all want to do media, for one, message me. I'm happy to help anybody who wants to start, but you don't have to do that. You can join ASAP as a spokesperson. They are always hungry for people who would like to be a spokesperson on small and large scale. They have a communications network. Follow them on Twitter, tweet them, they'll love it. There's traditional media, there's local TV news. We have Pat Charles from the PR department here at Erlanger here is representing. And there's a PR department, there's local papers, letter to editors, radio, podcasts are really growing. And of course, there's new digital media, social, Twitter, Facebook. Everybody can be their new publisher of content now. Facebook Lives, YouTubes, and of course, websites and the podcasts I mentioned again. Kevin MD is a great one if you want to write a blog, particularly about healthcare policy or care. It's really a great resource, and they are open to contributions. Other sites I write for, Huffington Post and Mind Body Green, tend to be more closed, but at times you can send something to them as well and submit to them. So again, a lot of places do want your input. So say you are contacted by the media, they reach out, and find out their deadline. Media often has a deadline they need to know in 2 hours. Often that is incongruent with our shift. You're in the middle of a shift and they email you. So if you can't talk to them, refer them to another EM physician or just to the ASAP PR team. And again, if anybody's interested in that, I'm happy to give you their contact information. Find out if it'll be live or taped or the length of the segment. And make sure that you also are not distracted when you do have time to talk to them. Just as importantly is know when to decline. There will be times, you can see this one with Jenny McCarthy, a friend of mine, Dr. Ari Brown's a pediatrician in Texas, does a lot of television. And they'd initially asked Ari to come out and talk. She was not interested in getting into a, as you can imagine, dramatized debate with Jenny McCarthy about vaccines on CNN. Sometimes that can be good, but the angle of this one was going to really be the drama about it and not really getting to the message. So there are times when you can change the angle if you're the only one. I went on Dr. Oz once and they wanted to talk about Tylenol being the most lethal medication out there. And it was being very dramatized, more lethal than opioids. And we had to back up a little bit. Not the case. They were amenable to talking about Tylenol being within the safety threshold, being a safer medication, but yes, having dangers above and below. But sometimes you can change that to make it less sensationalized and more fact-based, but still find the hook, because they do have to make it something that people will want to watch. So again, know when to say no, and if you can, change the trajectory of it, do so, and if not, it may be one that you want to decline. There have definitely been segments that I have declined because it was just not worth it. So preparing, before you go, tell them what you want them to ask. Because let's be honest, when you're in the middle of the interview, what you should do is answer the question that you wished they asked, regardless of what they ask. So if you can, tell them what you want them to ask. Especially easy with local media. A lot of times they don't have the background, they don't know the angle. They just heard this thing on the news and they think this will be a good segment. So they're looking to you, so it's great. You can do their homework for them and you can really steer them in the direction that you want to go. Give them the talking points. And then watch the stakes. As you know, in the ER, when you're delivering bad news to somebody, emotional stakes are very crucial for how much somebody will retain. Too low, whether they're in the ER or they're at home, they're not going to stop watching their podcast or fixing their coffee or fixing breakfast or picking their nose. Too high, and they'll be so emotionally engaged with you that fear and anxiety and helplessness take over, and they're not going to listen and process what you say. So how do you do that? With you're talking about back to school safety, then your headline isn't, hey, we're talking about back to school safety today. That doesn't raise the stakes. That won't get somebody to listen. If you instead say 20,000 children a year suffer from traumatic brain injuries related to playground and other related injuries after school, or September, more children are hit by cars in September than any other time of year. Talking about back to school safety, you're going to get people's attention. So again, always pay attention to that emotional stakes bandwidth, not too high and not too low, and you can get them to listen to you. Next, your SOCO. So here's our first video. This is going to be the real test. Your single overriding communication objective. This is what you want people to remember. Okay? So you write out what your paragraph is going to be, what you want them to hear, 2 to 3 key points, and then take that paragraph and put it into a single line. So, for instance, a SOCO. Say you're going to go do vaccines, and they're going to question you about vaccines. A SOCO would be that the anti-vaxxer arguments are based on scientific evidence that was not factual and has literally been redacted. And delaying your child's vaccines does nothing but put her in danger. That's your SOCO. No matter what they ask you, you come to that last line, you repeat it, and you won't get in trouble, no matter how much they try to gotcha with questions. So remember that. Practice it. If you're going on television, then use your photo booth video on your computer and practice speaking that SOCO back and forth to yourself. It's a really great way to do it. Let's see if this works.
Okay, that's the kind of thing you're going to have to be prepared for. It's going to be all over the news big time. What's your single overriding communications objective?
We're isolating the sick and quarantining those who we believe were exposed.
Okay, good.
That's it. It's clean. It's a single sentence. It's easy. Now, say you're being interviewed at home. Prepare a quiet space where you will not be bothered.
The question is, how do democracies respond to those scandals? And what will it mean for the wider region? I think one of your children has just walked in.
Spare having to facepalm your child. Keep them out of the room. Love that one. Just use it whenever I can. Prepare your appearance. So, and this is a fact, for females this is even more important. I remember one of the very first local news segments I did, somebody contacted me in one of the comments and said, couldn't remember a word you were saying because you had a piece of hair that was in your face and I couldn't listen to anything you said. I remember walking down the river in Boston crying, talking to my friend and saying, how many degrees do I have? And they were distracted by my hair. So I remember she's from LA, she does a lot of television, she's like, honey, we can get you some hairspray. It's true. Appearance matters. And you don't have to be Tyra Banks, but you just need to be neat so that it's not distracting. So to that point, no black, no white. You like color. Color's good. No little small print, that little DVF small print. Don't do it. Doesn't look good on TV. No dirty lab coat. Y'all, I know, yes, it's great to look like you just came out of the ER, but people do think that we look like Grey's Anatomy, like they think that's how we should look. So make sure your scrubs at least look clean. Your white coat looks clean. Always, if you're doing a TV segment, no matter, even if they tell you you don't need your white coat, take your white coat. Take your stethoscope. You don't have to wear it. You may not even tell them you need it, but inadvertently, or is often a producer will come and say, did you bring your white coat by chance? Yes, just take it. Take a jacket if you need to. And bring, if you're, for the ladies and men, if you have guy liner, take your own makeup. They often will do your hair and makeup, but sometimes it makes it look like you got punched in the face, so take your own. So how many of you have been to graduation speeches? Raise your hands. Come on, people. And if anybody has questions, y'all just ask. I mean, this is very informal. How many of you actually remember what anybody said in those graduation speeches? Sometimes. Less than half of you. And this is the trap we get into, especially being physicians. You want to give them a lot of information. You want to tell them everything. The reality is that they will not remember. Your job is, yes, it is to educate, but it is to inspire and entertain. And that doesn't mean you're going to be Eddie Murphy, but it means that you're going to raise the stakes, make it relatable, make it emotional, because that is what they're going to remember. It is things like this.
If you want to change the world, you're at Georgia Tech. You can do that. If you want to build the Iron Man suit, you're at Georgia Tech. You can do that. If you want to play theme music during your convocation speech like a we're at Georgia Tech. We can do that. I am doing that.
You'll remember that one, right? Again, bring color to it, whether it's humor or raising the stakes or just human relatability. And then you will get in your 2 to 3 points, because that's all people will remember anyways, and then they will remember you. They will remember how you made them feel at the most. Okay, so you've done your preparation. You are on air. Now you want to remember your SOCO. So this is one I was being interviewed, and it was talking about the Zika virus. This was last year, and they were then talking about how, but DEET's going to kill you, and if you're pregnant, DEET's going to kill your baby, so is it maybe better to get the Zika virus? My point was, no matter what, you have to protect your pregnancy. That comes first. That means using DEET or clothing or anything else. That comes first. Not getting Zika while you are pregnant is the most important thing. So remember that you can give that.
So I have a system because for all of us women who are out there who are pregnant, our number one thing is to protect our pregnancy.
Remember that statement. You can always come back to it, and then you have your data supporting it. But you remind people so they can remember, okay, got it. Protect pregnancy. Zika and pregnancy is worse than DEET or wearing my permethrin clothing. Don't wait for them to ask you either. If you have a really great SoCo, sometimes you never know what the reporter will ask. You don't know what they were given or how well they were prepared. They may ask you all these other things, and you get to the end of the segment and you realize you actually never said the thing that you wanted to say. So don't wait. As soon as they give you an in, you answer their question and make sure you fit in their SoCo, and make sure you also comment on how it will affect their viewer. That matters. They want to know, what does it mean about me? People are egocentric. Don't exaggerate, don't bash. I was doing this Fox News segment about measles and vaccines, and one of the commentators said parents who don't vaccinate their children should be arrested and put in jail. Well, any parent who was considering not vaccinating their child at that point, let's change a channel. So whether you're talking about another specialist that you're taking, who's caring for a patient with you, or another expert, you don't bash. It gets people to stop listening to you, and it diminishes your standing as an expert. Again, talking about the entertainment value, really fitting in there is the relatability. This again was another Zika. Last year, Zika, being pregnant, there was a lot going on with that. And people were wondering, they were hearing what physicians were saying, but they, as usual, especially after Ebola, they kind of didn't trust the old white guy telling them what to do. I was a pregnant female, and that resonated. So you share whatever makes you relatable to the audience. You want to share that.
So let's talk with Dr. Daria Gillespie. She's an assistant professor of emergency medicine here in Atlanta. And oh, by the way, she is pregnant. So you come from this from a very interesting perspective because you understand and respect the science that we're talking about here. But then you have your own personal concerns, because there's only so much we know that you can do to protect yourself and your baby.
It's so true, Frederica. You have children yourself. I'm a mother being pregnant now again.
So again, they will listen to somebody who is an expert and also going through what they are going through, whatever that is that you can do to make yourself relatable. On air further, controlling the story. You can control it. You will get a lot of gotcha questions, and if y'all are interested in the media, going to ASAP PR team puts on a couple of lectures every year about gotcha questions to avoid stepping into them. And because reporters will try to ask you things, and they'll try to ask you negative questions and get you to say something. For instance, they'll try to get, even a negative soundbite is still a soundbite. Do vaccines cause autism? And then you say, well, vaccines don't cause autism. But again, now you've said that quote of vaccines and autism together. So they will try to get you into gotcha moments that you will regret, or that they can just steal a little soundbite for it. It's quoting. So you want to always make sure that you control the story. So somebody asks you a question that you disagree with. Answer it. You don't want to see what's worse than a politician, seeming evasive. So yes, you want to get to your SoCo, but you want to make sure that you answer the question. You answer the question, provide data to counter it, and then you get to your SoCo. That's how you should always do it. Anthony Fauci did this. He does a great example. And again, flagging is your SoCo whenever you're saying it. The bottom line is, here's the take-home message. If you remember nothing else about this talk, I want you to remember. That's how to flag it. Bridging is when they've given you, as you'll see he does here, negative comment, and you want to take it back to your SoCo. And you can highlight, saying, but what I know is, or on the other hand. Let's see how he does it.
Republican Senator Rand Paul, who is also an ophthalmologist, a medical doctor, says that we are underestimating, in his words, the transmissibility of this disease.
I don't think that there's data to tell us that
that's
a correct statement, with all due respect. We have had experience since 1976 with how Ebola is transmitted. And it is clear that it's transmitted by direct contact with body fluids, blood, diarrhea, vomit, or what have you. And there's no indication that there is another insidious way that it's transmitted that we're missing because of the experience we've had. So we've really got to go with the evidence base. There's always hypothesis and surmising about that, but there's no scientific evidence.
So you saw how he did that. He answered the question, contested it, and then get back to the SoCo. So you get back to the answer and the message. So you're finishing on the message you want people to take away. I'm going to finish with, and again, we'll finish with plenty of time. I know y'all are probably tired and have other things going on. So again, I want you to ask questions if you feel like it, if you have any. We'll finish with a couple of additional on-air tips. Medical jargon, don't use it. Use, remember, 5th to 7th grade English. You will simplify it down. When you do that SoCo, you have this lovely paragraph that conveys everything and all the nuances, and then you distill it down to a single sentence that's very simple to understand. And yes, it oversimplifies it, and it goes against what we want to think because we say, oh, the nuance of it, if you really look at the sensitivity and specificity here. No, that people will get lost with that. You need to simplify it down. So avoid medical jargon. Don't exaggerate. That is the easiest way to get in trouble. Whether you're exaggerating a story that you took care of or a fact, if you don't know, that's okay. Especially if they try to ask you a question about something that you shouldn't be responding to or shouldn't answer. So, I'm not an expert in that. But what I do know is SoCo. It seems very formulaic, but that is what you do because you do want to give them things that they will remember, but you do not necessarily want to give them the sound bite. You don't want to be the sound bite that is played on all the different news outlets that night for what you inadvertently said. And of course, remember that the mic is always on. The mic is always hot, and you are always on the record. You are never, never, never not on the record. So even when somebody says, this is just on background, you're not being recorded, you're on the record, okay? Remember that. To that point.
Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States of America, Barack Obama.
It's funny, but it is a big deal. It is necessary that we do reclaim this narrative for our profession and for those people for whom we've taken an oath to care for. And everyone in this room can do it. It's simple to get started, and you can get started today. So thank you very much. And I'll take any questions. Yes?
Thank you for coming. This met all my expectations, so thank you. You are a very experienced, seasoned, on-air personality. But we also know that the number one fear above everything else is the fear of public speaking. And particularly young physicians who don't have that background, the idea of being interviewed on camera in front of large audiences is absolutely terrifying. So do you have any hints or ideas about how to deal with that anxiety that you have?
That's a great question. And it reminds me of when I was in college, I studied classical piano performance at the Eastman School of Music. And I remember when I was auditioning to do it, I was shaking so much, my knees were shaking, I couldn't press the pedals. I was so nervous. And I got in, and I remember asking one of my instructors had won the National Chopin competition multiple times in a row. I remember asking him exactly that. How do you keep your knees from shaking at your next recital? And he said, do you get less nervous? How do you control it? And he said, you never get less nervous. You just learn to channel it. So that does take practice. But yes, that still is there. And you channel it towards your energy to focus and practice, or when you're on there to remain present with regardless of what the reporter is asking you. But the second thing is you start small. I mean, as much as, once I started getting interested in media, yeah, sure, I wanted to go do Dr. Oz the next day, but you're not ready to do it. You start small. You start small talking to reporters, doing local news, which if you watch some of the local news segments I first started out with, I was breathing like this because I was really nervous. So part of it is just experience, just the same way when you're intubating somebody, you're doing a central line. I mean, y'all probably remember the first time you did a central line ultrasound, you're like, I'm gonna stab them through the back of their neck, or an LP or anything. It is experience. So cut yourself some slack when you're nervous at first, but then just start doing it. Don't wait for your big national break. Start doing it. Start doing it on YouTube. Start doing it on Facebook Live, or doing podcasts, or interviewing your fellow residents. Start reaching out to the local news and doing those things. Even I don't know if there's a local access channel here in Chattanooga. There was one in Boston. Is there one, Pat? There's not, never mind, scratch that. But still, doing any media, the more you do, the more you get practice and the more you get comfortable with it. And then also, like I mentioned, the ASAP PR lecture that they do every year at ASAP on gotcha. There's 2 or 3. One's on gotcha journalism and different ones to learn what to look for so you don't fall into those traps.
I'll tell you what I
What do you do?
I've done more presentations than I can ever remember, and a fair amount of television and interviews and lots of media things. And even today, before I do a presentation, I'm nervous, and my hands are ice cold. And because my hands are ice cold, it tells me that I'm nervous. So I've got to eliminate those cold hands so I get feedback saying I'm not nervous. So before the presentation, I go into the men's room, turn on the hot water, make sure my hands are warm, and then it helps me relax.
There you go.
Because I cannot go up to the podium with ice cold hands.
Rituals.
Yeah.
Rituals, no matter what you're doing, whether it's your checklist to do a procedure or keeping your hands warm in there, or just some breathing that you do. And again, if you're going to do on media, Google breathing techniques for public speaking. You can find a billion of them and have a little 2 to 3 minute little ritual that you do to send to yourself to get present, because otherwise we go through and we run through everything that we're supposed to talk about and you realize that you weren't actually present or addressing questions during the middle of it. And then lastly, remember that y'all are the experts. Whatever year even of residency you are an expert compared to a reporter. So don't forget that. I don't mean that in a way that you go out across as an egocentric way, but you know. Okay? You may not know specifically the techniques of speaking in public, but you know the signs and what to do for cardiovascular collapse. You know the stages of trauma. You know those things. So remember that you are the experts for this. I think that helps. Yes, Steve.
So thanks again for coming. With the explosion of social media, and there are a lot of things, in fact, I personally got off social media just because I was infuriated by the fake news, whatever you want to call it, whether it's political or medical. Use the anti-vaxxers as kind of an example. How do you as a physician deal with that? On social media, I read something, I get very, it's like, this is infuriating. Then, of course, I have a friend who likes it or comments on it. And I don't know how to respond to that, or if there's even a role. And then number two, when a patient presents, I read this on Google, or I had a patient that I did my research.
You see my mug up there?
My comment was,
The
Facebook
Google.
is not research. And I was consequently written up for that, but it's
Who hasn't been written up for
and
something?
I'm quite proud of that. But I can reconcile that kind of the social media aspect, and then when confronted with fake news in the emergency department, how do you reconcile that patient's expectations on their care based on what they are informed by?
Yeah. So for when it comes to social, choosing your battles, because you can get stuck into this vortex of debate. And what is the quotation? If a mindset is or an opinion is put in place without logic, then no amount of logic is going to cure somebody of that mindset. But that said, somebody who comes to you in the ER, they're presenting it some way, but they are still looking to you as the expert. So that's really a great opportunity. One thing, even with the anti-vaxxers, and I think this is true no matter what people are talking to you about, is to, instead of, again, it gets to the not bashing. And instead of bashing somebody or kind of judging them for that, the way I think about anti-vaxxers and how I deal with it is, so I disagree, a mother who chooses not to vaccinate her child, I absolutely disagree with her judgment on not to do that. But I do not and cannot judge her on her motivation as a mother. She is doing that. She is basing it on the motivation of wanting to keep her child healthy. She's choosing to do it in the wrong way, but her motivation is as a mother of keeping her child safe. So she and I now have something in common. We're both moms who want to keep our children safe. So I think coming at it from that standpoint is they're coming from wanting to know what's best. So that way, you have a connection, and now you stand to potentially give them some facts, give them some details to try to counter it. And try to a certain extent, the best you can, try to stem the tide of the Jenny McCarthy, that stuff out there, if that helps. Yes?
First of all, thank you so much for your
Of course.
I'm one of the fourth-year medical students applying to emergency medicine this year.
All right.
Yeah, and we had an interesting experience this year, specifically with EM, that all students applying to emergency medicine had to do this thing called a standardized video interview. And I don't know if you know about this, but it's basically like they had us do these 5 sort of standardized Skype-like video interview questions, and they're going to be graded, and there's going to be a grade attached.
Technology.
It's attached to our residency application, essentially. My question is, well, it's two questions. First of all, how do you think that residencies and emergency medicine as a field is going to use this specifically for the students? And second of all, do you think that the reason that they're using this program specifically for emergency medicine applicants is because maybe there's a push to have emergency medicine physicians specifically be diplomats for bringing information to patients, because there are so many patients that come to the ED and we see those patients. Just kind of want your thoughts.
That's interesting. I didn't know they were doing that, so I cannot comment on their motivation. There you go, see? I cannot comment on their motivation. But what I do know, but truly, if you think about it, emergency medicine is really perfect for being in the media. The TV stations know they can call me, and whether it's Ebola or a baby that was born in the backseat of a car or what have you, John Ritter in his Day or Dissection, I can comment on it. You can talk about it. You interact with every single specialty in the hospital. So you know how they are thinking to a certain extent as well, and you can pull them in. So emergency medicine is great for that, in that you also are very good at operating on very incomplete information, operating on your toes, pulling information and synthesizing it very quickly. So I think it is, if they are considering emergency medicine, diplomats for medicine, I think that's fantastic. I think you're all trained and ready for that. You do that every day. You just don't realize it. Jessica.
I'd like to echo everyone's saying it was a great comment. Thank you. Do you have any tips or resources you would recommend? One of the things that I think a lot of students and residents, and certainly myself at times, is how can we improve issues of nonverbal communication, and if we want to focus on this, one of the core faculty, the residents have teased me that when I think I look angry,
RBF.
like I'm famous. So like to the point of like eventually I got Botox to remove a furrow, and they've all like commented, to no end about, they're like, this was great. This is awesome. You're so much better. Like, well, you're nicer now. So if I had known I could cure this for $100, like years ago, I would have. And so it's been awesome. It's really happy with me. But my point is, I think it's a great illustration of how something as simple as a forehead wrinkle can impact how we're perceived.
Yes.
And this could be a struggle. And it begs the question of, was it thoroughly in my patients when they were trying to tell me something? As I'm concentrating on what they're trying to tell me. And so do you have any resources for if we're trying to change these behaviors or even unaware of them?
Absolutely. So I remember in residency, that reminds me when we were doing our standardized patients, apparently what I used to do is say, do you have any other questions for me? So indirect body language. Part of it is having people watch you, because then my preceptor said, we need to talk about this. So having others watch you, maybe you have whoever's on shift with you, if it's the attending or another resident, if it's attending that you feel comfortable with or another resident, say, if you see me interview a patient, will you just give me some feedback? I'll do the same for you. Somebody that you feel comfortable being candid with. Our PR person said, I remember I was going on Fox or something, and she's like, oh, by the way, don't make duck face. You really make a lot of duck face. Apparently when I'm thinking, I do this, which looks funny on camera. So having people watch you and give you that feedback. If you don't necessarily have that, and if you are going to do something on television or even not on TV, I mentioned it, photo booth, if you have Mac, and I'm sure that PC has something similar, you can video yourself. Yes, you look funny on a computer camera. Don't judge yourself for the size of your nose or the way that all looks. But you can get a lot of feedback from watching yourself. And it is painful to watch yourself. I know that. I have to force myself to watch my own segments because you need to do that. But having somebody give you that feedback and then watching yourself. And then just some typical tricks, like you all probably know. I thought about putting these in the talks, but there was enough. But sitting down when you talk to patients. When you sit down in front of them, it makes them patients statistically think that you spent more time with them than when you stand up, regardless of whether you did. Sit down on a garbage can is what I would pull up when I was in residency because we didn't have enough chairs. Or Amy Cuddy out of Harvard has done a lot of a lot of research on our power posturing. Now, it's kind of, you want to have the opposite. If you were going into a negotiating boardroom, you want to be very testosterone-y and big and shoulders back. And if you're sitting there trying to get a patient to tell you, a 15-year-old to tell you about something that just happened, you don't necessarily want that big power posturing. You may want to be smaller. So again, those sorts of things can help you as well. But watching yourself and having that feedback, having people tell you about that, makes a big difference. Yes?
One more question. So I had a patient yesterday who, his friend got in a car accident. The guy with a big head laceration. His friend was convinced that seatbelts kill more than they save. And this person was very firm. He was very fixed in his belief. He wasn't listening to any sort of advice or logic that I was giving him. How do you deal with patients who have a belief and they're not going to listen to you no matter what you say? What's your sort of tactic towards that?
That's the delusion, is a firm fixed belief, not grounded in any logic. Yeah. There are some that you cannot save. No, I think no matter what, you may be the only person that bothers to tell them otherwise that day. And you never know what somebody hears that they take home. So I think, again, getting to them, telling in a factual way, maybe trying to understand what's the question behind the question there. Like why does he think that seatbelts kill him? Understanding his motivation, maybe you can counter that. Not the question on the surface, but the question behind the question and getting to that there. And then just doing your best. And sometimes you will not change them. But sometimes 2 weeks, 3 weeks later, what you said may resonate. If that helps. Anything else?
So from a clinician perspective, a lot of us are EM residents. There's always a chance that we're in some little hospital, single coverage or something, and a disaster happens. And somebody shows up at your door, and you're not prepared to be in the media. Like, what is your steps to take when something like that happens? It's not so much about my opinion as like aligning myself with the institution's opinion. And so how do you manage those from a clinician perspective?
So for one, if you're the only person a disaster happens, it's very easy to stay away from whatever camera shows up because you got to take care of the patients first. And they stay far away. Number two, that's where your hospital PR comes in. So I was in Boston. I was at Beth Israel Deaconess during the Boston bombing. A lot of patients were brought to us, including both of the bombers were there. So we were taking care of them. So you can imagine the media, the lockdown police zone that we had at our hospital. When those things happen, you do not, I would say in that case, take care of your patients, do never leave them, do not talk to the media until you have your hospital PR, and they will help you, and they will guard you, and they will tell you if they want you to, because often they won't want you to, especially if it's a crime-related something. You may be subpoenaed. You do not want to get in front of the media in those situations unless you know it's something cleared. So.
My wife even we have some videos
Yeah.
because we kind of just had a severe care disaster.
I know.
And my wife saved videos of like what came across like Fox News and CNN. We see some of our attendings picturing in and out of the shot. It's like sometimes it's just hard to avoid because people are so intrusive about it. And so here it's nice to have security, but I think about some of these small facilities where you just don't have that level of staff. It's just like
Don't talk to them. Just don't. And if they do come in, I mean, that is a HIPAA violation. They cannot have a camera walking around your ER. You can get the police if that were to happen. I worked at the BI, I went to a bunch of satellite hospitals, so I'm thinking of one of the satellite hospitals that potentially could have happened. But again, if you have security or police, you can get them to stay out and just don't talk to them. It's a way to stay out of trouble. So, you had a question in the back?
Yeah, I was just curious if you sought out the TV and the media stuff, or if it kind of just fell in your lap as you were practicing.
Yeah, so as I mentioned earlier, it was when I saw with the bird flu epidemic, it was something that I became interested in. So I started working with ASAP PR. And if you're working with the PR team at ASAP, opportunities come up. A magazine wants to interview somebody, or a TV show wants a quotation or something. And so I just started, when they needed somebody, if I was available, I helped out. And one thing really just led to another. It really there was no grand plan. And I always, I know the media world is very mercurial, but their people are hungry for this information. So just I'm going where the questions are and just trying to provide the answers. Yes?
I just want to add to if there was an emergency or a crisis or something situation that happens in the media, it comes on camp. I'm Jennifer, I work at a PR office.
Thank you, Jennifer.
I just want to say that most hospitals, this size, we have a protocol and a policy for emergency response, and we have a committee, and public relations, media relations is involved with that. It's, you know, we go to the command center, and so forth, we go to the JIG. But if any of you do go to a smaller hospital, check with the administration to see if they have a protocol for emergency response. And if they don't, because they're a small hospital, they might think they don't need it, kind of take that role and say, we do need it. Anything can happen anywhere, and we need to create a committee and start working on it. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. You can check with other hospitals and see what their policy is, take some suggestions from what they have done. But we are here to help you. We know that your role is to first take care of patients. And typically, it's not until after the situation has happened, things have calmed down, that we will open it up to media. But it really depends on the situation and who is going to be the best representative for the hospital to play that role.
That's a great point. The PR team really is your friend. I mean, I don't do a speaking thing in Atlanta or anywhere else without first talking to the PR team at ShareCare, making sure, and it's not because they're going to say no and they are the police. They have very good opinions. They often know far more about the background of a specific reporter or something, and they will help you. And so also, it can be very tempting to, you see something that is something in the news and you want to take a picture of it. Again, during the Boston bombings, one of our nurses took a picture. They'd done a thoracotomy on the older brother. And he was we put him in a room, there was a police officer there, and the nurse and the police officer took a picture of this post-thoracotomy picture and posted it. So again, resist that. Especially if it is a hot topic. You do not post anything, do not say anything until you have the blessing of your PR. So of course, that nurse and police officer no longer have jobs there. But again, it can be very tempting to do so, but in those situations, it's not in the best interest.
If you don't mind, I just want to add one other thing. You were talking about why emergency medicine could be so popular for the media. We get at least probably once a week a media call. Can we talk to one of your emergency room physicians about this? And not typically, we know you're really busy. We don't want to bother you. We could probably go to another physician, but sometimes we do call emergency room to see if there's an interest and if someone wants to talk. Snake bites, tick-borne illnesses, something that you don't even think is really that important. But it's important in the media at that time because, one, they've seen a lot of snakes out there. They're getting a lot of calls. And so something, even that, what you might think is that simple, we get that talking come to us. So.
Again, and you're the experts in that. So you can answer a lot of those questions in your sleep. So remember that. So that's great. Thank you. Any other questions? All right, I'm going to be doing a Facebook Live, I think, at 12:10, and then another one at 1 p.m. If anybody's around, I may pull you in. So I think that's it. Thank you again for your time. It was great to meet all of y'all. Oh, and if anybody wants to contact me, feel free or tweet. I'm at Dr. Daria on Twitter and Facebook. And they have my email if anybody wants it. I didn't get that. Thank you. Yes, let's do it.
We don't have that many famous media people.
Thank you. Yes, let's do it.
Is somebody get here?
Yeah, Bill is.
Let me get. Do you want to come be in the picture?
Oh no, I'm not exactly a picture.
The banner in the background or anything in particular?
Yay!
We want to get you back to do that for a much broader physician audience.
Absolutely.
All right.
Hold on, we're taking some pictures.
Yes.
We'll do some selfies.
Take two.
Yeah. Cheers.
No.
Perfect.
I did want to let you know, though, I'm our research director. I am interested in
direct overhead lighting is not.
Velvet got some, didn't she?
Yeah.
I don't know if you ever.
I'd like to get a picture of the two of you.
People to do content review?
Yes, if you like it.
Oh, we do. We do. We don't pay very well, but we do.
Well, I do a fair amount of writing and.
I would love that.
I'm a
Yes,
research
so.
writer. If there's projects you're interested in at all, or.